Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Thanks for coming back if you've been before. So today I wanted to talk about the Motherpeace deck because several reasons. So it came up in a video I was watching last night, a live with the Hermit's Cave. They were spotlighting new decks, and Cheryl from Oneness Emporium said that she's getting some more Motherpeace in, and that it's going out of print. And then we got into quite an interesting discussion about the deck. So that's one reason, and then another reason is because this was pretty much the only deck I used for about 20 years. So until recently, I only had this one tarot deck and I had one oracle deck. So I know this deck the best out of all the decks, and I've seen comments like in different places from people saying that they'd love to get into the Motherpeace, but they find it kind of inaccessible, or they've bought all the books but they can't get around to studying it. So I thought if I shared some of my favourite cards, that might be quite a useful kind of way into how the deck works. And then the other thing, I'm going to do a little spread as well, because some people struggle with the fact that the cards are round, and I've got a system that I use for that. And then yeah, also just to discuss a little bit about the criticisms of the deck and different alternatives that are out there. So that's what I'm hoping to do. So just the materials that I'm going to use today. So this is a book by Vicky Noble, who is I think she was the originating author, and then she worked with a friend of hers, Karen. Forgotten her name. It was Karen. Vogel and Vicky Noble. That's right, Karen Vogel and Vicky Noble. So they created the deck together. But yeah, Vicky Noble wrote this book, Motherpeace: A Way to the Goddess Through Myth, Art and Tarot. And it has really loads of amazing information. And then I'm also going to use the tiny little booklet because it's absolutely mini, but also it has some quite useful stuff in. And then the deck itself is this. I've taken out a few cards that I want to show you, but it's this mini. This is the small size. You can get it in a much larger size. But this little guy travelled with me all over the world. It's been around the world a couple of times. Yeah, and it's filthy. Look at that. It's not been edged. That's just dirt. So I don't know how to clean it. And this is a little silk that I got in India. I'm going to do a little reading. I'll show you how I read with it. And then yeah, this is the little tin that I've kept in it. Also, it's a cooking tin from India, so it's travelled around the world in that, kept it safe. Yeah, so just to do a little flick through. So these are the cards. They're quite small, but I find them easy to handle. And the imagery, it's I think they painted them in watercolours, I believe. They did them all by hand. And it's a reinterpretation of the RWS system, but it was the first deck created by women, as far as I can find out, only by women. And it was also the first round deck. And it was really quite groundbreaking at the time. The reason I love that world card, it's really nice. The reason they made the deck, so I'm going to quote from the little mini. Yeah, so Vicky Noble says, the tarot has gone through many changes since the first known deck appeared during the Renaissance, but all the traditional decks have been designed from a male point of view and drawn as if no one other than Europeans existed. Motherpeace Round Tarot emerges from a need for positive female images, including strong women of colour. The deck comes out of 5 years of self-healing and esoteric study, in a time when women's power had begun to blossom. So there was apparently, when they were creating this deck, there was a lot of energy around feminism, and yeah, it was a transformational time, although sadly things didn't transform as much as they could have. But that's like the little introduction from there. And there's, I think, something I wanted to quote from the big book as well. Oh yeah, this was about how they created it. So it sprang into being during a visible and documented wave of feminist and shamanic creativity that swept the country, being the US, during the late 1970s. Inspired, Karen Vogel and I conceptually split the tarot deck in half and began to draw pictures, taking 1 year to complete the 78 original black and white line drawings that were to become the Motherpeace cards. Having never drawn pictures before, we were amazed and incredulous at the process. So they sat down each day to a blank piece of paper. She says she went into a trance and lost track of time, immersing myself in sacred thoughts, images and feelings for hours at a sitting. So that was how they created it. It was kind of split half and half, and she wrote that in 1994. Oh, here we go. She says, women from around the world have told me that they can't use other tarot decks or books because they find them too negative, too patriarchal or too heavy. But Motherpeace speaks their language, relates to their experiences and gives them a friendly response when they ask for help. And I think, and it's original in that it contains multiracial and multicultural images. So it was, in those ways, it was very groundbreaking. And certainly for me, I found it quite accessible. And it's a friendly deck, you know, it is, there's not very many negative images in this deck, and even the ones that are negative have a kind of positive slant to them. So yeah, it's nice to work with in that way. So I've picked out a few cards to dive into more deeply, and I think we'll start with that, and then I'll get into some of the controversies. Or then I'll do a reading first, and then I'll, after that, discuss some of the controversies around it. So the first card I want to talk about is the Magician. So that is the Magician card. And I'll go to the description. So Magician is dancing the fire. So there's always like a little subtitle which kind of encapsulates what the card is supposed to represent. I'll just also read the little one from the book. So, I mean, after I'd worked with this deck, obviously, for several years, I kind of knew all the larger chapters, and I used to just travel with the tiny book. And those little meanings sometimes spark just enough to, you know, to remind me of the kind of bigger meanings behind it. But the Magician, like the sun, the Magician is fiery and light, the active male archetype, the ego in action, swift movement, and organisation. She starts projects, builds things, and creates through the fire of the will. So yeah, the figure is a she, or represented as a she, although it represents active male archetype, which is, I think, quite important. So it says here, the alchemy of fire is the magician's great secret. So it's all about fire as the kind of creative manifestation of a lot of things. So her activating power changes one thing into another. She represents the tool maker and the shaman. Of all early techniques, fire was the most powerful and versatile. It allowed people to turn grain into bread, clay and stone, inflammable matter to ashes. As people consecrated around the central hearth fire, its warmth and light could protect them from wild animals and the cold, as well as ensuring a magical sense of sacred power embodied in the flames. So that's kind of the overarching kind of representation. And then some of the symbols in the image I want to just talk about. So it says here, in the Motherpeace image, the magician wears an animal's skin in order to identify magically with it and take on its power. This image recalls the bird-headed woman on the ceiling of the Hall of Hieroglyphs at Pechmerl, a cavern in Spain. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Gideon calls her the earliest known representation of the fusion of a human being with an animal. And what is she doing on that ancient ceiling? She's dancing. In the Motherpeace image, the magician continues the ancient tradition of dancing the fire of magic and sexuality. The knife in her right hand, like a witch's athalmi, I don't know if I'm saying that right either, draws energy to earth like a lightning rod. The wand in her left hand directs the energy towards manifestation. She breathes in power and magically wills it towards what she wants to have happen. Similar to a Native American prayer stick or a royal scepter, the magic wand is frequently considered by Western culture to represent a phallus, but the magician directs her will with the left hand, the female one. In the Hindu tradition, these same elements are employed by Kali, goddess of fire. She holds a sword or knife aloft and dances the world into creation, having the power to destroy it as well. Like the magician, the red Kali represents active female force, Shakti, the power to act, the shamanic power to make heat. The fiery Kali destroys falseness and conquers egotism. So you can see that she draws a lot on different goddess traditions, and that's basically how they've constructed the symbols and the text. And then it says, in the Motherpeace image, the magician's eye is on the Sphinx behind her, which embodies the mystical meaning of human and animal forms and retains ancestral secrets otherwise lost. The magician, as human ego, studies the mysteries of the Sphinx in order to stay in touch with what is sacred. Without this connection to magic and the sacred rites of fire, the ego becomes egocentric and thinks of itself as the center of the universe. And she knows the magician's stance allows for eye-to-eye contact with divinity, while at the same time touching the more physical elements of water and earth, the cups and coins at her feet. So you can see, still the wand and the coins and the cups from the RWS system are still present in the image. She knows that the ego must mediate between nature and the divine, and finally come to understand that the two are one. So once you've read about the different symbols in the image, it starts to make sense, and a lot of the meanings do directly map onto, or with slightly changed meanings, map onto the RWS meanings. So when you get this card in a reading, it means you have the gift of energy, you're motivated to do, to act, to go forth. The magician stands for solar consciousness, the bright yellow light of day, and Mars energy, the red of action. Now is the time for beginning projects, taking a stand, affirming some idea you believe in. You may feel goal-directed now with a sense of purpose and self-motivation. So that's the reading part of the book description. So that is the magician. And I do like that card. The next one I wanted to show you is Chariot. And the Chariot card was kind of my card when I was doing a lot of traveling and using this deck. So, and I really like this card as well. It's Cancer, which is also my star sign. So yeah, I used to enjoy this card and the representations in the card. So there is the image. Doing this around my iPad again, so sorry for the wobbling. Okay, so the Chariot represents the winner of a victory, a triumphant Amazon warrior. Whereas the Lover's image was about merging and union, the two in one of a sacred marriage, the Chariot represents the independent thought and action of the Virgin, one who can move out of relationship and into work. The Charioteer is the Greek Athena, goddess of wisdom, who, according to Robert Graves, came from Lake Triton in Libya. Originally, before her monstrous rebirth from Father Zeus's head, she was the Libyan triple goddess Neith. I love those amazing stories about the gods and goddesses. Neith, who some scholars think is the oldest goddess in the world, was goddess of the upper heavens and is the same as the Egyptian sky goddess Nut, pictured in the Motherpeace image. And that blue figure sort of represents the firmament. Firmament is the sky goddess Nut. Nut's body across the top of the Motherpeace image represents the night sky and contains 13 stars, linking her with the moon and the lunar number 13. The crab, in astrology the emblem of Cancer, the cardinal water sign, links the chariot to the high priestess and to Artemis the archer, ancestor of the Libyan Amazon driving the chariot. The Amazon's bow and arrows reiterate this connection. You can see them there. The crab also symbolise the kind of protective armour that the Amazon wears into battle, symbolic of the psychic protection afforded by the Moon Mother to her worshippers. And then some of the other symbols. Like the chariot, Pallas Athena directs her will from a strong central self, balanced and whole. This centre is represented by the double-headed axe she holds in her right active hand. You can see that. Symbol of matriarchal power and a balanced yin-yang personality. So every part of this image is symbolic of something. And I think that's important to know. A symbol also of the sun, the axe itself was worshipped, much as spears were in some cultures. In this context, the axe represents the ruler of the universe, and the charioteer is definitely the ruler of her own universe. She's taken control of her life and can handle her vehicle or personality. So again, that kind of vehicle under control aspect of the chariot, which is similar in the RWS. And of course, the image itself has many kind of things that reflect the RWS imagery. On the charioteer's shield is the head of Medusa, the Gorgon Queen. If we're going to focus. I've actually never... Oh, my friend had the large images, but we travelled with my small deck, so I haven't really worked with the larger cards, but it'd be nice to see these in a bigger format, so that's why I'm thinking of picking up a copy from Oneness Emporium when it comes there. Anyway, on the charioteer's shield is the head of Medusa, the Gorgon Queen, with her snake hair, her eyes wide and her tongue sticking out. Graves says the Argives describe Medusa as a beautiful Libyan queen decapitated by their ancestor Perseus after a battle with her armies, and identifies her with the Libyan snake goddess Lamia or Neith. The Gorgon's head is merely an ugly mask assumed by priestesses on ceremonial occasions to frighten away trespassers, another reference to the secrecy necessary for the magical world she's about to undertake. And the red face links her to Kali as well. And then across the sharp division between the earth and sky, seen in the landscape, green new growth and the sky blue spiritual presence, the tree of life stands, joining them together, just as the human being links the visible and invisible worlds of physical matter and spiritual entities. What the charioteer learns as adept or initiate is that duality is only illusion, the way things seem to be. And in the reading, the chariot represents groundedness and the ability to accomplish tasks on the physical plane. It also traditionally symbolises the victory of self-discipline. When you get the chariot in a reading, you may find that your mind has achieved greater control over the unconscious parts of yourself. But it's not prohibitive and stiff like that of the emperor. Hold on. It involves bringing unconscious contents to the surface of consciousness for the purpose of accomplishment. In this work, you may act like the kind of warrior who Carlos Castaneda describes, the one who confronts monsters and turns them into allies. Whatever you need to do to accomplish your goals, you do. You set your mind to the task and focus until it's accomplished. It's important then to be sure your goals are positive and that you don't ride roughshod over another. And that was always quite an important part of the card whenever I drew it. Not to put my goals ahead of other people's. What does the little booklet say there? Yeah, the chariot represents a vehicle under control, the Amazon consciousness that allows a person to take charge of her own life and make her own decisions, agreements and responses. A winner, the charioteer, a victorious warrior, self-disciplined and firmly grounded on the physical plane. So another card that I really enjoy. This is the last major arcana, and then I'll just show you a few of the minors. So this is the moon, and I know some people find the moon card tricky. I always liked getting the moon card. Don't know why. But this card is beautiful, I think. And there's obviously the labyrinth there. So in the little book it says, the little book is falling apart. The oldest form of goddess worship was based on the moon and its matriarchal connections with oceanic tides and menstrual cycles, periodicity and the power of change, intuition and the emotional flow of the nighttime consciousness. Waxing, full and waning, virgin, mother and crone, she rules the astral way and lights the soul's labyrinthine journey from darkness into the conscious light of day. I really like that. I think that's why I used to enjoy getting it. So yeah, it says the moon represents the core of the ancient female mysteries, the journey into the labyrinth, or as Noor Hall says, the underground dwelling of the goddess. The labyrinth is the holy path to the centre and back out again, the moon wheel, which in the words of Monica Shu, sorry I can't pronounce that, spins in both directions, bringing knowledge and energy for both creation and destruction. Very similar labyrinths are found as far apart as India, Crete and Arizona. And a simplified version of the labyrinth, the double spiral, is found everywhere in the world. The spiral, like the snake, is always a symbol of the goddess, especially of the feminine power of regeneration, going in and coming out again. The way is marked by Ariadne, Cretan goddess, who had the spider-like foresight to unroll a thread as she entered the labyrinth. And I don't know why, but I'm very interested in Ariadne. I just ordered the Red Threads tarot deck as well, which is available from the Red Seeds, I think, in the UK. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Like the Motherpeace images described in later chapters, the moon represents the shamanic call, in this case the call to enter into the darkness. The labyrinth invites, and a boat waits to transport the spirit of the initiate to other realms. The winged gate, which Newman discusses, stands like a beacon at the end of the tunnel. So I think that's is a winged gate. For a long time I used to think that was a whale tail, but it's a winged gate. It's waiting to be entered, the birth canal that awaits the soul at the end of the journey of development. In tarot tradition, the moon represents unconscious desires and the fears that accompany the sense of losing control or falling into the unconscious realm of sleep and dreams. However, if one is afraid to enter one's own astral territory, one can never truly know oneself. And the mystery of initiation is about little more than this. The phantasms flying around, those like white squiggles, in the Motherpeace image, are visions and illusions that occupy the astral plane, making this a dark night of the soul. The astral plane is crowded with unhappy ghosts and negative thought forms created by the human mind and projected into the space around us. But then it says, as long as one can surrender to this lunar mode of consciousness, the journey will be creative and full of revelation. One can expect, like the orgiastic priestesses of old, that the trip will involve powerful and deep experiences of wisdom and understanding. And then in this journey, there's truly nothing to fear except fear itself. It's fear that creates demons and all the unpleasantness associated with the moon card in traditional tarot. So you see what I mean? It like takes a negative card and then gives you ways to work with it in a positive way. Just some more of the symbolism. The sea green reminds us of desire and the magnetic pull of the watery realms. The moon rules all fluids, including the waters of the body and brain, so she has a powerful influence over us. Certainly as powerful as over the tidal pools of entire oceans. She pulls us to her depths, and if we go in fear, we are likely to struggle, experience hysteria and paranoia, become a lunatic, and possibly miss the revelatory experience itself. If we go without fear, we experience ecstatic and joyous entry into the labyrinth. But when you get the moon reading, there's nothing to do but yield to the feelings. If you try to figure things out intellectually, you'll fail. The moon is a sign of unconsciousness, you may as well flow with it. If you can open yourself to being in the moment and not trying to figure out what lies ahead, if you can enter the darkness with eagerness and courage, if you can trust in the higher powers to guide you intuitively through the journey of darkness and the unknown, then you will learn from the voyage and gain consciousness as your initiatory gift. And then, yeah, also suggests a few things. The moon is a good time for dreaming, keeping a journal, dream work, dream yoga, lucid dreaming, and so on. So, oh, and then another way of tuning in is to get into your menstrual clock, and so on. So they give you some sort of practical ways to work with the energy as well. Sorry about that. I was interrupted, and the interruption lasted a whole day. I was interrupted by a series of people and children and husbands and dogs. So anyway, it's the next day, but hopefully I've just rewatched the last bit, so I hope I know what I'm talking about at the moment in the video. So yeah, I've shown you the 3 majors that I wanted to talk about. And now I'm going to just show you a couple of the minors as well. And the descriptions of those in the book are shorter. So the first one is, I want to show you the 10 of Swords, which of course is like the defeat card. And in the Motherpeace, so you have the minor arcana readings, meanings in like a little list like this. So you can see there, the 10 of Swords, it says mental trips carried to the extreme. So there's nothing left to do but jump into the water. Let go and move from the head, air, to the heart, water. And then also extremism. So that's how I always used to read this card, that I need to let go of my ego and move more into like, just let go of whatever it is I was holding on to and move into an emotional space instead. So it was quite a, it wasn't the worst card in the deck, you know, which it can be quite a hard card obviously in the RWS system. So I'm just going to, where is the 10s? 10s, there we go. I'll read you a little bit from the bigger book. So the 10 of Swords represents the final letting go of some idea to which the ego has been attached. In this picture, the idea is the ultimate one of life itself. Robert Graves tells the story of the priestesses of Athens who leaped off a I can never say this word, promontory into the ocean at the advance of patriarchal troops rather than submit to rape and patriarchal wedlock. In this spirit, the card depicts the absolute abandonment of a cherished image, plan, or way of life. And there's grace and spiritual joy in the bodies of the priestesses as they surrender to the inevitable end of life as they've known it. The card represents the dramatic end of a cycle, a sudden coming to terms with what really is, rather than what one wanted or hoped would be the case. Traditionally a card of ruin and loss, this 10 represents a sacrifice that once made allows the personality to get on with its broader purpose in the world. In a certain sense, one may feel a relief in the certainty that the 10 of Swords symbolises. The struggle is ended, the ego has no choice but to let go. But the dive into deep waters below may yield a new experience of feeling and emotional sensitivity. So yeah, it's that sort of moving from the, there's nothing left to do but to jump into the water and move from the head, air, to the heart. So yeah, it's the end of the cycle of the air pips, the swords, and I always found it was a transformational card, but not necessarily as negative as it might read in some other decks. Yeah, it's kind of, you know, the whole deck is sort of soft like that. The next one I wanted to show you is the Son of Wands. So one of the criticisms of the deck has been about that it doesn't have enough positive male representations, but I don't think that's true. There's a few. So the shamans, for example, there's 2 male shamans as well as two female shamans, and the two male shamans are both positive figures. Yeah, 3 out of 4 of the suns, I think, are positive representations. The Son of Swords is a tricky one, but this one I really like it. And then instead of page, it's got daughters. So it's daughters, sons. I've forgotten what. Daughters, sons, priestesses. Sorry, daughters, sons, priestesses, and shamans. So this is the Son of Cups, and in the little book it says, the Son of Wands is a clown, the energy to delight, light, relaxed spirit, freedom. So you see, it's already it's like a positive meaning, and I love this. Is one of my favorite cards as well in the deck. Love it. Whenever that came up, it was like, oh, we're going to have some fun. So the Son of Wands, when you get this, let me just talk a little bit about this. So the Son of Wands represents the horned god of ancient shamanistic religion and contemporary witchcraft. Unlike the swords, this sun is not cut off from the mother or the group, but is dancing at the centre of it. He represents pre-macho masculinity, the archetypal positive male principle, whose elements are light and fire. He's untamed, as Starhawk says of the horned god, but untamed feelings are very different from enacted violence. Instead of going off to seek individual glory, he remains within the orbit of the goddess. His power is always directed toward the service of life. His sexuality, though wild, is also gentle and tender. Traditionally the lover of the Great Mother, the sun delights, amuses, and entertains. He celebrates life in much the same way as his sister, the Daughter of Wands. Yeah, so then there's a little bit about the representations. Okay, another small interruption. Sorry about that. Yeah, so yeah, I won't go into all of the symbolism in the card, but there is quite a lot about that. There's a clown, a shaman. Yeah, it says the Son of Wands represents the contrast of male energy to that of the Emperor, who represents father as ruler. Light, like the bright yellow background, and connected to goddess space, like the light sky blue behind him. He represents high energy, a penetrating mind, and cheerful success in the world. When you get this card in a reading, it suggests a buoyant, energetic way of being in the world. Your personality is alive and delights in amusing, entertaining, and attracting others. When they're refusing to take things seriously, when the card's upright, signals a lot of sexual energy or easy creativity, playful experience of the life force energies. So yeah, this is another one of my favourite cards. Then the Nine of Cups. So I'm showing you one from each suit basically. The Nine of Cups is here somewhere. And the Nine of Cups represents physical and mental enjoyment and well-being. So Eden Grey has called this the card the wishing card, suggesting that when it appears in a tarot reading, a wish will come true. And it's priestesses visiting the sacred wishing well. There's a statue of the goddess with her arms upraised in traditional moon priestess style. They bring offerings, maybe they throw pennies, since copper is sacred to Venus Aphrodite. And then they drink the holy nectar represented by deep blue water. It's a visionary card. They open themselves to the inner ability to envision future events. They creatively visualize what they want the world to be. They're able to wish for what they want without doubts, without putting a no on their wishes as soon as they experience them. Card of optimism and trust in the future. It indicates a time for letting oneself wish for whatever one wants and trusting that one deserves to get it. So just another really nice positive card. And in the little booklet, wishes made and received, happiness, positive, expansive feelings. The Ace of Discs. So aces are as in other Rider-Waite-Smith decks. The link to like the beginnings. So this is gifts. They say aces are gifts. And the discs. The Ace of Discs promises the gift of earth energy, the birth of something in material form. It could be a baby, it could be money coming. So I used to love getting this because I had no money at the time. I was traveling. Whatever the form, it signifies something manifesting. Someone brings something, does something nice, or makes one feel good in some way. It may be the beginning of some new work or job, a brand new life, a new pattern emerging. The person learns to make ideas into physical reality. The acorns on the rug speak of winter's long nights and cold days, the time to store what's needed for later. This ace signifies a time of meditation, an inward pull of energy. The baby represents the inner mysteries and the birth of a solstice child in December, celebrating the turning of the wheel of the year. And the baby leopard represents the animal spirit that will grow up with the child. It may be the same leopard whose skin the magician wears after its presumably natural death. The animal lends power to the human spirit, giving it the gift of bodily life. And in the little booklet that translates into ace, newborn, a gift, beginning a new project. So it's like a simplified. Oh, I think, is that all the 4 that I was going to show you? Yeah. I showed you wands, the swords, the discs and the cups. I just wanted to show the 3 of swords because that comes up a lot. And obviously the imagery around the 3 of swords is very different from the kind of traditional heart with the swords stabbing through it. And this one, whenever I got this in a reading, it would be like, there'd be like a three-person kind of argument. There was like some tension between me and 2 other people, or yeah. So it wasn't about heartbreak. It was about kind of tension and argumentation. What does it say here? 3 of Swords. Emotional drama created by the mind, unfinished business. Yeah, so you can kind of see they're having a battle. So again, it was never that bad to get it. 3 of Swords represents the way mental energies merge through struggle. In a dance of power, difficulty precedes harmony. 3 parts of the personality, or 3 personalities, are engaged in thrusting and guarding, a dance of defense that can only be painful. Either the mind's caught up in worrying about relationships, or several people are involved in what looks like a soap opera. So it's like that threesome kind of vibe. They want to relate, but egos won't let them get close. In the Motherpeace image, the women have put on bird costumes to enhance their powerful repartee. The masks they wear to escape being vulnerable. They wish to be like bird priestesses of old, dancing the ego out of sight. The daisy chain at the bottom represents the ways they're linked to each other yet feel trapped by that. If this is a dance of love, then each party needs to get in touch with feelings of the heart. Or else the end will not bring happiness or harmony. At least one of the 3 involved in this romantic triangle expects to lose a lover. So that wasn't always the reading, but yeah, that kind of tension between 3 or more people. So those are the cards. I wanted to do a little reading because I know people have struggled with the cards being round. So I wanted to just show how I work with the round cards, and how I like interpret forward/backwards tilting round cards. So I'm not going to shuffle like madly or anything. The spread that I always did with this deck is, I always thought it was the Celtic cross, but since getting sort of into more kinds of tarot. I've discovered that it's not the Celtic Cross at all. That's something different. So I don't know what my spread's called. I learned it from a friend of mine, and I've always read with this as a larger spread. But basically what it is 3 cards for the above. So this is like the what's karmically available. And then where I am right now is the central. And then 3 below is how, you can't really see. Let's see if I can push them up a bit. 3 below is how I'm responding to the situation. And then there's 3 past leading up to the current, and then 3 future. 3 future cards. Okay, so you can almost see all of those cards. I'm not gonna do the whole reading because it would take too long. But basically, how this works is the outer circle is usually the overriding energy, or a longer term kind of energy or project. So that often worked in terms of like my like long-term developments in my life or something like that. So it would be at a 3 month plus kind of scale in terms of time. The middle circle would be at a sort of shorter period of time, like a month or something, things that have been happening more recently. And that would often be, the middle circle would often be around work issues. So yeah, the outer circle would be more spiritual, like long-term spiritual. The middle circle would be like around practical or work-related things. Then the very close circle would be around things that are happening directly now. So like a particular problem that I'd encountered, or a particular something that was happening, and that would be on like in a weekly scale, let's say. So it would be like weekly, monthly, and 3+ months, let's say, in terms of the circles. And so the cards relate to each other. So I'm just going to do the inner circle, how that reading might roll out. And then this is where I am right now. That's nice. So the way I would read that inner circle, let's say, so there's a daughter. Did I just make that card upright? Well, that means I feel upright about it. So the daughter of swords is the sort of immediate past. So that means, actually, I'll just use the little tiny booklet because that'll spark. So the daughter of swords, there she is. Daughter of swords, testing your skills and power, calling energy to you. So you can see she's, I'll just show you the upright for a second. She's calling a horse, calling power. I'm not going to go to the bigger book and the symbolism, but she's testing her skills and power. And that was pushed forward. So the way I would interpret that is that I'm forcing that energy, or I'm pushing that energy. So I am pushing my skills. I'm pushing my energy into something. So it's kind of a forced energy around that card meaning. So that's the recent past. So I was forcing some energy. And then at the top there, you've got the 9 of Wands. And that's also, it's a lovely card. So this is like the energy that's available to me, like in the universe. This is the overarching kind of energy. So the as above kind of energy. So this is the 9 of Wands, energy in reserve, stored up for when you decide to use it. But that is held right back. So it's like there isn't as much energy available at the moment, or that the energy is being held back by something in my environment, which is preventing me from accessing perhaps that energy. So I'm pushing my energy, and it's being held back. The Sun card underneath is absolutely lovely. So it's a pretty typical Sun meaning, which, let me just see what the booklet says. When fog clears and consciousness awakens, happiness rises inevitably as the sun. The spirit is refreshed, life makes sense, and the personality experiences a warm, open-eyed awareness of its purpose in the world. So it's pushed forward again. So it's like I'm pushing into the energy of sort of conscious happiness and yeah, I'm pushing into the energy of my purpose in the world as well. So it makes sense to me at the moment, but I'll get to it when I get to the Priestess of Cups. The card right now, the Ace, is falling in love, self-love, allowing yourself pleasure. So yeah, currently I'm sort of allowing myself pleasure in terms of my pursuits, and I don't know if that was backwards or not, but I've turned it upright, so that's how I'll read it. And that the future, which I would see as the direct outcome if these things remain as they are, is the Priestess of Cups, and she's actually one of my favourite cards in the deck. I really like this card because it's about creativity, which, you know, I'm very passionate about. So it says living inside the dream world, creative movement. And the bigger book has something nice about that card. I'm just going to read that a little bit. When you get this card in a reading, it suggests an inner musing, the gestating consciousness of a mother, the nourishment of the womb. Your thoughts are focused within, your mind engulfed by the power of the imagination. Your emotions are important now, your feelings and desires central. You may feel spaced out. Upright, this is a card of mother love and divine inspiration. You're asked to yield to the ocean of collective memory and experience represented by the unconscious, where something new will soon be conceived. So, yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense to me, because right now I am really kind of diving into some creative processes. I've been really enjoying drawing and creating. I'm working on a couple of different decks. I'm also designing various other things, dolls and other kinds of crafts. So I've been really diving into that. But I think I have been pushing that energy, and I've been feeling really drained, actually. So this card makes a lot of sense. So yesterday I suddenly hit sort of an exhaustion point. But at the same time, my sort of response to what I've been doing is very positive. So I want to carry on with what I'm doing. And what this card says to me is that I can carry on with this kind of process that I'm in, which is this very creative process, but just to be a little more gentle and a little more sort of thinking more, and maybe doing a little bit less, being a little bit less sort of driven about my activities. I've been kind of in a rush to do lots of things at the same time. And also, you know, all the other things in my life, like looking after my family, and, you know, there's a lot going on outside of my creative practices, which are probably explained in the larger circles there, but I'm not going to go into them. So that's how I read the round cards. If they're pushed forward, that means I'm pushing the energy, or the energy is being pushed, and if it's tilting the other way, it means the energy is being held back. It's not really ever a full reversal. It just means if it's fully reversed, it just means that energy is being blocked by something, or I'm not allowing the energy to come through. So yeah, it's a push forward and and a pullback kind of energy. And if it's more or less upright, then it's, I read it as upright. And I was watching somebody else. Who was it? It was Lisa Papez did a video showing, I think it was on the Tarot of Her. Yeah, and in the Tarot of Her guidebook, they talk about moon phases, and Lisa Papez did a video showing that in that book, they show waxing as active energy, which is kind of mapped onto what I see as pushed forward energy, and then waning is held back energy, which is how I see held back energy as well. So yeah, that's exactly how I read them as well. And then the other thing that you can do in a reading like this is, if something is being held back, then you can work on getting it upright, and if something is if you're pushing something forward too much, then you can work on sort of releasing that and being less pushy. So that is how I have always read the Motherpeace. Sorry, it was a bit waffly. Not very good at reading on camera, but I think hopefully it was useful. Okay, so that is all about the deck, and then I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the criticisms of the deck, because obviously there have been some controversies about it. So basically, I mentioned one already. There was this kind of criticism that the deck and the book, the language used by the authors, that it was kind of man-hating. And I don't think that's true. Like I said, there are several positive male images in the deck, and they do talk about male and female principles in positive ways throughout the book. They do talk about the patriarchy a lot. It's very critical of the patriarchy, but obviously they were in the middle of a huge feminist movement at the time, and that was a necessary move, and I think it enabled our contemporary expressions of feminism, even though they've moved on, changed in fundamental ways. In terms of the representations, there's not much gender diversity. I think that's a very contemporary fight, and they don't really lean into that at all in this deck. There's body shape diversity. I think the women are kind of real shapes in the images, and they explicitly, obviously, seek to represent various cultures, especially, and they said that, especially women of colour. And I think the intention behind that is primarily a good thing. And of course, today, still not many decks do that particularly well. But this comes with its own problems. And this is the big criticism of the deck, was around cultural appropriation. And I think, first of all, this is a whole discussion about tarot, which would take another video. I don't think I'm the right person to do that video. Around cultural appropriation in tarot. But obviously, tarot, cartomancy, divination, and so on have historically drawn on negative or stereotyped images of other cultures, so-called exotic cultures. And I'm thinking particularly of like the gypsy fortune teller stereotype in European occult traditions. The circus gypsy who's reading Madame Whatever, who's reading her crystal ball kind of thing. And that was it reproduced a harmful and exotic image of Romany people. The word gypsy is an exonym, which means it's a name given to a group of people by outsiders. It refers to the idea that the Roma came from Egypt. So gypsy, Egypt. Gypsy. And that's not true. They didn't come from Egypt. It perpetuates an outsider image. And it led to discrimination, this kind of perception of the Roma people. It led to terrible discrimination and horrific things happening to them historically, including genocide by the Nazis. Excuse me. So, words can hurt. And I'm a linguist by trade, so I know this. So I don't use that word. I don't use the G word. But anyway, I'm going a bit off topic, but in modern tarot, obviously there are decks that are based on other cultural belief systems like Aboriginal belief, Native American, and so on. And some of these decks are created by people from those cultures, and others aren't. And we just have to be careful. We have to be careful about all these representations in the tarot, in the ways that we interact with other people's spiritual practices. And it can be useful as well to distinguish between open and closed practices in terms of what's okay to be represented. So open practices are cultural practices that are open to anyone who wishes to learn them or who wants to learn about them. And closed practices are restricted to members of a particular culture, ethnic group, or religion. And the problem with the Motherpeace was that some closed practices were drawn on, which the authors didn't fully understand. So the culture in question was the Ngeri tribe from Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast in Africa. And the imagery draws on some rituals that are associated with female genital mutilation. And that's an awful practice that persists and that many women suffer from globally. So the authors themselves did address this in their book. They acknowledged and addressed it. I don't actually have the book that this quote is from, but I found this quote online. It's from the Motherpeace Tarot Guidebook. Karen Vogel, right? I think this must have been in the 90s when it was re-released, not the first printing, but I'm not sure because, like I say, I haven't got the book. But Karen Vogel wrote, "In both the High Priestess and the Temperance card, I've used images of women of the Ngeri tribe from the Ivory Coast. After the deck was published, I found out that the costumes, body painting, and dancing of these women comes from a ritual done after clitorodectomies. Sorry, I can't say that very well. Clitorodectomies. It seems a contradiction to have the power of the High Priestess and Temperance cards framed in a ritual that includes female genital mutilation, which is an extreme and brutal repression of female sexuality and a violation of fundamental human rights. Still, I am inspired by the extraordinary dance, music, and regalia, which I hope will live on in powerful rituals without female genital mutilation." So that's what she said about it. And they didn't change the images, at least at that stage. And this is a problem with the deck that you can either accept or not. I think I found a way to carry on working with my deck by replacing those two cards. I only found out about this very recently. I didn't know it while I was using the deck for 20 years or so. I've really recently discovered this about the cards. And when I was researching, I did find a rumour that the cards were changed in a later edition, but I've never managed to verify that, and I've never seen alternative images for those two cards. So I only have the small deck, so I'm thinking of picking up a large one from Oneness Emporium when Cheryl gets them in, so I'll be able to look at that. But yeah, I can replace my. So I had two cards that came with the mini deck, and somehow they've stayed with me over 20 years. So one of them is the traditional charge of the Star Goddess, and I've put that as the High Priestess. And the other is about the authors, and I've put that as Temperance. And I'm going to use those in the deck. I actually haven't worked with it since I made that decision, but then I can leave the problematic cards out. Because, yeah, although I recognise that is a huge problem, and that I think they should have changed those images when they realised what the issue was, there's other parts of this deck that I really still appreciate. So yeah, it's up to you whether you can accept that or not. There are alternative decks of a similar style. So another which came out around the same time was Daughters of the Moon. Someone was asking about it in the Hermit's Cave video the other night. I've never used it, but apparently it has a different kind of vibe to the Motherpeace. So, I've shown you Motherpeace is quite gentle, and apparently the Daughters of the Moon is a bit more like female power kind of deck. And the images looked like that when I was looking at it earlier. It came out shortly after Motherpeace, but it's also a round deck. But I think it's out of print. I couldn't see any copies available online. except for huge extortionate prices. And then there was a new one called the Tarot of Her. I've mentioned it already. It came out last year, and that looks really close in terms of vibes and symbolism and so on. And I saw a comment on Honey Lou's walkthrough saying that it's Motherpeace for a new generation. So I'm very tempted to pick that one up and have a look at it, because yeah, it actually looks really nice. So if anybody has that deck and any thoughts about it, then please do comment. But yeah, as it stands, and this is my last comment, I think Motherpeace still needs to be recognised for what it was at the time. It was a groundbreaking deck that challenged old representations. It spoke for and to women. It tried to be inclusive about that, and it opened the way for the many varied interpretations of the tarot that we have today. And for the authors, uncovering the representations of different goddesses through history was a way to reconnect with the goddess, the Great Mother, and that's where Motherpeace comes from. And they gave that to the readers of the book and their cards, and for that reason it's always going to hold a special place in my heart. So thank you everyone for listening and for staying to the end. And yeah, have a lovely new week.